Hi Johnny, I promised I would make a video in response to I Miss Religion, the video you made, and this is it. I saw a number of the video responses to your video, and what struck me about them is that a couple of them were sort of along the lines of, yeah, I know what you mean, I'm in the same situation, and then another few were along the lines of, yes, but at least by choosing atheism you know that you're taking the most reasonable position to take. Well, that is all well and good. You probably know that anyway. The thing is, that doesn't make you feel warm inside, does it? That doesn't give you any comfort knowing that you're being realistic and reasonable. It doesn't give you that solace you used to get from your religion. So what do we do about that? Now, I've listened to your video and you're not going into any details, so I cannot make a specific response to your particular situation because I don't know what that is. And I'm going to try and formulate a worldview here based on atheism and realism, as I would call it, and naturalism, but that I derive some comfort from myself, and I hope it might inspire you as well. I'm going to start talking about death first of all, and your response now, you're looking at this now, you might say like, well, actually, you know, in my situation nobody died. Maybe they did, but maybe not. So how is this relevant? In that case, I would ask you to stick with this, because what I'm going to say about death to start with will reflect on what I'm going to say about other areas of life later. So please stick with it. Okay, when you're an atheist and a naturalist, you're going to have to accept the reality of death. And a lot of atheists do that. They say like, well, you know, I don't believe in God anymore, I don't believe in an afterlife, so I accept that, you know, at some point it's all going to be just over, that's it, end of story, do not pass go, sort of thing. And that's a frightening prospect. So what a lot of atheists do at that stage is to say like, okay, I'm accepting this intellectually, but it's too scary to think about deeply. I'm going to shirk away from this now. I'm going to try and not think about that. And that's a pity, because I have spent quite a bit of time thinking about death. And I've decided to use a poetic phrase, to stare into the abyss and look what's there. And I found it to be actually quite beautiful and comforting. So I'm going to explain this. You see, it is natural, if you're taking an atheistic worldview and a naturalist worldview, you would be tempted to take an external view, to look at yourself as if you're talking about a third person. And you're looking at yourself and the place you occupy in the universe. And of course you get that zoom effect, you know, you see yourself, then you zoom out and then you see the world, and then you zoom out, you see the solar system, so on. And the more you zoom out, the more insignificant you become, and you realize that you're a tiny, pointless little speck of dirt floating around in a vastness that doesn't give a shit about you, and you're only going to be around for a tiny little bit of time, and then you're gone forever. It's completely futile. But why would you take that position? That's the thing. Why would you take that position? Because, if you think about it, all you will ever experience, the fullness of your experience, everything that you will ever know and understand and feel and experience, is dictated by the fact that you are a material being in a finite space occupying a finite amount of time. You can only ever experience things from the first person perspective. You're only going to ever know what it's like to be you. And what does that mean with regard to death? Well, death is something. We're all going to die. But none of us are going to experience death, because by the time you have died, there's nobody there to experience anything. So why would you even worry about being dead? Because you are never going to be dead. You're never going to be in a state where you have the experience of death. By the time you've died, you're gone. So you don't need to worry about death. All you're ever going to know is life. You don't even... The other thing is, you might feel this longing, this sort of sense of loss, because when you were religious, you were promised this eternal life. Well, first of all, it was never real in the first place. But secondly, even if you feel that longing for it, what are you actually longing for? You know, what do you feel you've really lost? If you think about it, you are, again, I can't repeat this often enough, you are a finite human thing. You can only ever encompass, you can only ever understand, get your head around a finite amount of anything. Imagine if you were thrust into eternity to live forever as you are. No matter how beautiful it would be, it would ultimately turn out to be hell. You would either get into a position where your memory is crammed to its limit, full of stuff, and you cannot process any more, in which you're going to live your life in a daze for the rest of eternity, or you're going to get the Homer Simpson effect, where every new thing that goes in pops out something else, and eventually you'll be in a position where you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you're going, and you're just floating about aimlessly. Or, as the religious would have it, you are changed so you can cope with eternity. It would have to be a fundamental change. You would be unrecognizable. And what that means, if you think about it, is that you can't attain eternity. You would have to be transformed into something that is completely different from what you are now. What you are now will never achieve eternity. So, it's a red herring. It's something you never had, even if the religious claims of eternal life after death are true. It is still a lie. You're not going to get eternal life. You are not going to get it. So, you might as well forget about that. Dying. Would you have to be afraid of dying? No, why? You might be worried about dying a horrible, traumatic death. But what does traumatic mean? What does it mean to be traumatized? Have you ever had a traumatic experience, an accident or anything like that? If you have, then you know what I mean. Because the traumatic experience itself is a strange, disassociated kaleidoscope of impressions and fleeting glimpses of things. You have no idea what's going on. The trauma comes later, when the reality of the situation of what just happened sinks in. But when you die, that later doesn't occur. Nobody, even if they die in the most screaming agony, can in fact be traumatized by their death. Now, isn't that a comforting thought?